Welcome back to the channel. And today is going to be, to some, an exciting video, and to others, maybe not so exciting. We're going to talk about some price predictions for Zen cryptocurrency. And we're going to talk about what is seemingly now feeling to me like the end of Hex, right? So, again, that's going to kind of upset some folks are kind of seeing it coming, and others are excited to be in Zen, this latest cryptocurrency project. So let's get into that. Let's get into some interesting price predictions. Let's get into the fundamentals of why I think these price predictions are going to happen. In this particular case, I think the fundamentals are going to be the more important than any technical analysis, right? Um, and I think by the end of the video, I think you all are going to begin to see a lot of where I'm coming from. So Zen has had a pretty exciting start. Uh, um, of course, now it's crashing, but that's what typically happens to most cryptocurrencies like this. Was no different with the Hex project, where over 90% of the token's value was lost, right? And the same thing is following true for Zen, right? But if you were a person who have observed these markets and are kind of understand human nature, kind of understand market sentiment a bit because you've been in the game that long, right? Then you'll know that there are going to be some practical reasons why we might see Zen return up to a level maybe even higher than it's been. So let's get into that today. Let's get into it. So a lot of this prediction is going to be based on the similar nature of another project that we all well know similar to this. And this is Hexcoin, right? Started by Richard Hart, right? So we're going to talk about the end of Hex today, the infighting, because this is all going to be paramount to getting our price prediction and how we're going to arrive at it, right? So why is it so interesting, and why is it so pretty much telling the tale how this is going to happen? Well, what we have to understand about the Zen project, right? And I'm pretty sure many of you already know this, but the Zen project, uh, it's not anything revolutionary or new, right? Feels a lot like Hex. It's attracted probably mostly Hexicans, right? I can pretty much tell you right off the bat that most people who understood this project, participated in it, it's probably like 90% Hexicans, right? Now, the reason that's a problem is because then in that case, it means Zen is eating Hex's lunch or will eat Hex's lunch. But it also means that because of the nature of Hexicans in the Zen project, it's probably likely Zen's going to follow a very similar path, to Hex, right? Meaning that as you're looking at the price of this cryptocurrency, remember this thing is getting into it's going to be a few sats soon, right? It's going to be less than a few sats, right? So when it gets that low, right? What happens then? Well, it's nowhere else to go but up after that, right? Same thing happened with Hex. Hex went all the way down, believe it or not, to a few sats, right? Look just like this, right? Even worse. And over the years, it returned, got all the way up to what was its heights, like 50 cents now. So what I'm saying is Zen has far greater fundamentals to it than Hex, and we're going to explain why this is going to be very important. So Hex has reached this pinnacle, I believe. I believe Hex is on its last leg, and that if the post chain and post X Richard Hart projects didn't come up in addition with that to kind of gravitate around Hex, that Hex would just die out. And I'm not saying that because that's what I want to happen. It's just my observation of this, and I even said at the beginning of Hex, and Pretty much, I'm more of an OG than any of you all. I can trace videos back to like 2018 while I'm talking about Hex. So anybody, all you new Hexicans who have avoided my videos, remember I'm the granddaddy. I can prove I've done video on Hex way back then and benefited greatly from it. But the reality of the situation is this channel is all about education and being informational. Make sure you have all the information, not just what we want to tell you, and certainly not what I want to tell you to pump my own bags, right? That's not why I want to do the channel, and that's not why I do the channel, right? Um, so the problem then is you're basically having this infighting now in the Hex community because Zen and Hex is now competing toe to toe for who's going to be the dominant cryptocurrency in this particular department, right? These are two projects kind of similar, in nature, right? That means they're going to be that more competitive. Right, their starts are similar, their patterns are similar, but what's different about them? And this is going to affect the price. Very important. And this is what you have to understand, right? Both of these gentlemen, Richard Hart and Jack Levine, right? Jack Levine being the founder of Zen Cryptocurrency, one of the original Google employees, right? So he has a good pedigree, he has a great pedigree, right? But he has more than that. He has the understanding of the true nature of decentralization. So this is all going to impact the price of Zen, right? This is probably the most important part of it. Uh, the entire uh, philosophy behind why you're buying Hex and why you're with men or buy Zen is that they have the true nature and understanding of decentralization, right? But Zen has it more than Hex, right? And that's why I'm saying it's the end of Hex. And why is that? Because what Hexicans tend to do, or what they have erroneously done, and what Richard Hart himself has erroneously done, has been to class decentralization into just not dealing with middlemen. But decentralization is a much more broader area than that. And to truly say that you're operating in a space of decentralization, you have to cover all the bases. And the basis being network control, being wealth, as well as the geography, being development teams, and being exchanges, right? Meaning what percentile and levels of them are decentralized, right? Uh, and where Hex fails is in the decentralization of the origin address, right? Now think a moment, how ridiculous is it to have a cryptocurrency project that's trying to avoid many of the pitfalls that exist in our standard economy, only to have 90% of the currency be controlled by one entity, right? You've traded one dictator for another. And even if that dictator is benevolent, and I think this is what spawned a lot of the infighting with Hex, in particular, Richard Hart seemingly disapproval of the Zen cryptocurrency. And of course, that's to be understood. Richard Hart's a capitalist, right? He doesn't want any competition. If it's up to him, he just wants on this entire big blockchain he's developing his projects and his projects only. But the problem is with that entire thing is that's anti-cryptocurrency, right? That's not operating in, for him to be benevolent dictator and know what's best for everyone and decide what's best for everyone is anti-cryptocurrency. And here's the other part to it. Even if he was those things, right? Even if he wasn't flamboyant, egotistical, doing outrage marketing in the worst economy we've seen in probably the last 50 years, where people are struggling day in and day out, only to see him buy his latest ridiculous $50,000 bag when most of the population can't survive. you know, it, I believe that's also anti-cryptocurrency. But even if Richard Hart was kind of throwing a curveball and he was doing all of these things to trick the market, trick you all who won't listen otherwise, unless you, I'd agree, you think you're going to get more, get ahead of the next guy, get more than everybody else instead of hoping for the well being of your neighbor and everyone else around you that you can be economically prosperous together, which is possible, but greed stops that. But even if Richard Hart was a benevolent dictator, even if he would control the blockchains and hex projects, uh, upward to 90% of the control of it, and even if he did all that, and his hopes and dreams were only that of good, as many have brought out in the community, he's walking around Miami Beach, Miami, and going all these various places. This is what happened to a Wall Street billionaire. He was held up by a gun, right, and forced to turn over his accounts to the robbers. And he was very smart, able to. The guy was only able to get $1 million out of him, right? And he was bragging later about he had much more money, that he that wasn't locked up that the guy could have got to. But I mean, getting a hold of the keys to the cryptocurrency under gunpoint, any under some type of mistake, that humans can make, whatever the case may be. I believe it is anti-cryptocurrency to base your financial future on the whim of what could be one person, right? And I don't think anybody would disagree with me on that. With Zen cryptocurrency, whether you want to talk about the mental aptitude for those to create these bots and do things like that and mint the tokens, also be mindful too that I'm glad to see the value of it dropping because it means to people with these bots pretty soon it's going to be on parity to what it costs them to pay for gas. And then you got to claim, the tokens, you got to pay more gas fees and move and all that. By the time you do all of that, you're probably not even profitable or barely profitable, which it means the incentive to use all these bots, as it were, is going to go down and reduce tremendously, which means then we're going to have to probably play the waiting game. And that's probably going to be much like how Hex and Pulse is going to be years from now, 2-3 years from now. But let's get into the price predictions. If you can understand, and this would be easier for the early Hex community to understand as we went through the same exact thing. But why am I saying this the and the Hex and both these things can't exist? Well, the reason they can't exist is the same reason we had social media dominance the way we had it. It's the same reason that when the WISE token tried to go up against Hex, it failed, right? And that is nobody wants the second best product of this caliber. If you're in social media, nobody's on the second, third best social media sites, right? They're always going to be those major sites that they go to, right? And that they flock to. And so, what will happen with Hex going up against Zen not meeting these parameters is going to lose, right? It's going to continue to dwindle down. Also, Richard Hart's direction to make, the post chain just his own project hub, it's not encouraging the introduction of new money to the chain, right? So what happens then if Jack Levine just does his own blockchain, reduces the fees of Zen cryptocurrency, does his own exchanges, does his own development, the community does the same thing, right? You know, but you're doing that with a person who is probably going to be more likable to the community. Again, I think and Richard Hart's a smart guy, and I can surely understand. I mean, he can surely be smart enough to understand this, that what he does on social media is only going to attract a handful of people, right? Most people who are, destitute and who are trying to live the crypto dream, but it's not happening for them. Watching Richard Hart is not going to influence them or encourage them like it would with Jack Levine, right? Jack Levine's coming from a more humble standpoint. He's coming from a more fair area, at least in principle. Everybody can get in and admit this cryptocurrency, up into, years on end, right? Meaning anybody can come in and kind of have the opportunity to get in at the ground floor. And that's another part of this as well, outside of all of that. And that is just the fact that Zen being a free Satoshi's, it's much easier for it to go to 2 to 3 cents than for Hex to go to 50 cents, right? So that's another reason why the price prediction of Zen, I could, at the rate it's at now, it's no reason for me to not believe that Zen can't do a 10,000x like Hex did, right? And likely will, because the community that made that possible, likely they're going to do the same thing here with Zen, right? Now, some of them might hold off at first, and some of them might, try to fight for Hex in the beginning. But believe you me, nobody's loyal in cryptocurrency. And when they see Zen doing 1,000% returns, as it were, and all that potential money they can make with something that is probably a lot more secure than Hex, they're going to jump ship, and I'm sure Richard Hart probably knows that. For this thing to hit a penny, at my short-term price prediction, I could see this thing getting back up to 1 cent, probably over the course of the next 3 to 4 months, in my prediction, and in less than a year, maybe jumping up to 40, 50 cents, right? And I know that sounds crazy, and I could be wrong, but looking at the fundamentals of Hex, because what they're saying about these bots is such, I think it's going to be a lot less profitable for these people to mint these bots, and then it's just going to be a price go up game, right? Of people, in that parameter, and saying, hey, this is a better version of Hex, right? That's what I think this is coming down to, that all those billions of dollars that exist in Hex, a lot of them are going to end up in Zen cryptocurrency, right? So I'm looking at this to reach 1 cent in the short term and around 40, 50 cents over about the next year. I also want to say that when we talk about infighting in Hex, again, I was talking about Hex in 2018 going to 2019, because I saw in Hex what I see in Zen now. Richard Hart's whole persona changed from the original Hex, where he talked about these Robin Hood-like ideas and big whale penalties, and what did that translate to us in by definition? Was it translated to fair systems, fair for all systems? But now Richard Hart is flaunting the Ferraris and more than he had never done that prior to now, right? Even though he talked about being retired and such, but he does it all the time now. But it seems to the glory of Richard Hart, and the original message I felt he had about fairness didn't exist anymore, right? And decentralization, because let's face it, democracy, decentralization, fairness, these are all very similar ideas, right? They all are connected in through this synergy where they're almost the same. And I just feel like Richard Hart's lost touch of that, right? I think now he's talking to his 80 to 100,000 Hex stakers. He's not talking to the rest of the world. Whereas Zen is kind of going back to the things that got me excited about Hex in the beginning and all those things. So another thing is I'm 100% Zen and not on board with Hex, and I'll tell you why. There's another pact I made when I create the Citizens Dividend, the Bitcoin MYK project, the project that might not get popular to another 5 or 10 years, but one that I've been pleading with you all to join to make the world better, to the Citizens Dividend, championed by people like Martin Luther King, Milton Friedman, Thomas Paine, the greatest people in history. You all know it better as universal basic income. But all these concepts of how you can mint free coins and the variety of things. They exist on these ideas. And if you want to grab the masses of people in cryptocurrency, eventually you're going to have to lift the human spirit, create projects that resonate with them and that are for them, built for them, not built for you to flaunt uh, luxury items and say that it attracts people in, when I could pretty much guarantee you that people who are taking their last few dollars to invest in crypto, struggling to buy groceries at the line, which is most of Americans, aren't excited and aren't interested in seeing Richard Hart get on social media talking about how much money he's making. Those days are far behind us. Right now, it's all about building fair systems that keep us economically prosperous and healthy. You know, those Lambeau Dream days are not saying that they're completely over, but they're not as important as they once used to be, right? So now it's all about being a smart investor and doing things that make sense and putting ourselves in a situation where people can't steal our money, whether that be the government or other cryptocurrency project creators, right? If what I'm saying to you all sounds reasonable and sounds like the right information, not only should you like and subscribe, but I will go on a limb and tell you that only deal with two projects, Zen cryptocurrency and Bitcoin MYK. And you may ask why that is. Because these are the only cryptocurrencies at this point in time that I could say are free cryptocurrency projects. At the same time, they have a potential to be something big and bring value to the world. The other ones don't. Now, Zen has this problem. I keep pleading with these guys not to launch on Ethereum, but I know why they do it, because all the money's on Ethereum, right? And maybe they're not as long term as me, who are doing it on projects like Hive and Polygon, where it's going to be less fees, going to probably be longer to gain the value and the traction, but it's going to do so much for the world when it does. Unless you can bring projects that can boast those things, that are completely free and can give you something more than you give it, unless you can bring a project that does that, then why are you not using Zen and Bitcoin MYK? Because these are projects that are doing that. But those are my price prediction. Those are my thoughts about the infighting and the end of Hex. That's all I want to say in this video. If you like content like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and whatever you do, don't forget to join Bitcoin MYK. Get your cryptocurrency free there today just by logging in, because you're not going to have to pay any gas fees. It's trading on exchanges. People are making maybe not a lot of money, but they're making some money off of it. And I think that's going to get even better in the future. And it's free without the hassle. What do you got to lose? Why shouldn't you be doing that, right? Anyway, that's it. Till next time, take care of yourselves and each other.